All right, hey everybody. Before we get started tonight, I wanted to make a quick announcement because we have an exciting event that kicks off tomorrow before I hand it over to the folks who will be introducing our speaker tonight. So how many of you guys have heard of the Ideas to Serve competition? Anybody? We've got a couple? Okay. So basically what the Ideas to Serve competition is sponsored by the ILE. You can get course credit for it, but it's basically for students who are really trying to understand deeply a social or an environmental issue, and also students who are trying to solve problems, social or environmental, that they've found before. So we have two different tracks, one that's more oriented towards discovery, and then one that's more oriented towards solution finding. And by the name of it, the competition, you actually are entered into kind of a prize situation, right? So the people with the best kind of discovery solutions and then also solutions to their problems are eligible for prizes. And this year we have a really exciting partnership that we'll tell you a little bit more about tomorrow if you join us for the info session. We're partnering with Oxford University in the Map the System Challenge. So basically, a couple teams, likely one or two from the I2S competition, will be selected to go and actually compete at Oxford this summer. So exciting things coming up. We have an info session tomorrow from 11 to 12 in Scheller 101. Let me know if you guys are interested. We have an RSVP link I can send you. Lunch is included. So keep that in mind.
Hey everyone, my name is Hada and I'm a fourth year CS major here at Tech. And thank you for everyone for showing up this afternoon. The event is sponsored by the Institute of Leadership and Entrepreneurship, and later this week the event will be uploaded to their YouTube channel if anyone wants to rewatch it or anything. So our speaker today is Elaine Dinos, and she is the founder of Kindred Lane, and she serves as a strategic advisor to the Imperative Group and Conscious Company Media. Kindred Lane is an organization that helps nonprofits and people focus on social impact and purpose-driven growth. And then Elaine went to the University of Virginia, and she also worked at Korn for over a decade, where she served as a principal for their Marketing Center of Expertise in Global Consumer Market and their Purpose Community, which she helped launch in 2016. She's also on the board for two nonprofits, Urban Recipe and Zaidi Project, both of which are in Atlanta and focus on food security. So please, everyone, give her a big round of applause for Elaine.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Huda. And so Kindred Lane, the name comes from, well, it's really inspired by kindred spirits I've met on my purpose journey and my path. And I heard you say fourth year. I went to UVA, where we also said first year, second year, third year, fourth year. So I'm already among kindred spirits. I didn't realize that you all, you refer as first year. Yeah, I love it. Great. All right, well, as Huda said, I'm Elaine Dinos, the founder of Kindred Lane, which is a social entrepreneurship. It started as a bustling organization of one, myself, trying to live my purpose, being powered on purpose, and taking a lot of what I've learned in the corporate sector, combined with my own personal experience and my own soul searching, a lot of market research, science, and my spiritual journey too, some ancient wisdom traditions. And so this is all evolved into what I'm going to share with you today, or at least give you a taste of today. There's a lot more behind this, so we're just going to scratch the surface. I think the sheet says Powered on Purpose is the name of the talk. This is an updated version of that talk called Sparking Healthy Growth for Your Organizations and Yourself. So we're going to talk a lot about companies and what's happening in the corporate America, but it's going to be a hopeful message. It's going to be exciting, hopefully. At least I'm excited about it. I hope you will be too. And we'll talk about how being powered on purpose for yourself actually relates to being powered on purpose in your organization. So you guys are in school. I'm thinking that you put a lot of things up in here. Yeah? You guys want to get into your whole bodies for a moment before we just try to cram more stuff in here? All right. So with purpose and anything that I talk about, it's always if you're able and willing willing is a big part. This is all opt-in. So if you think I'm crazy and you don't want anything to do with this, then just don't follow along. That's cool too. You can't force purpose. So if you're curious, interested, a little bit daring, can you stand up out of your seat? It's going to be easy. Awesome. I love the way you just popped up. All right. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about this later, but we're going to do a quick exercise just to get into our bodies. So first, and if you're staying in your seat, you can still participate. So if you are sitting in your seat, you can still participate. So if you're standing, you're going to, in a second, I'm going to cue you to stomp your feet. If you're sitting, you can just do this. Stomp your feet. You can do this. Okay. Now we're just going to do this a little bit. Woo! Yeah. See, we're using our bodies. If you're sitting and you want to do this, or you can just do this. Okay, what about this? Just shake it all off. Okay. Now let's just take a big, deep breath in and out. All right, stillness, freeze. Okay, another breath. You can make a sound too if you want. Feels good. Okay, let's do this again. You can shake your head if you got to get some stuff out of there. All right, this thing again. Woo! And okay. All right. Y'all feel good? You can sit down. That's it for now. Okay. All right, so now we'll talk about some stuff, but I'm hoping that you're not just going to try to cram it all in here, that you're going to just be open and receptive since your whole body has just been awakened. So I want to ask you a question. If you think about corporate America today, I know how many of you have actually internships, jobs before school, worked in what you would consider corporate America? All right, how many of you have studied and read about corporate America? Okay. Which earth, air, water, fire, which earth element would you equate to the state of corporate America today? Any? Fire? All right, whoever said fire can come get a sticker afterwards. You want a sticker now? All right.
Thank you.
All right, if you said fire, you can come get a sticker. Okay. This is not to say every company's on fire, but I spent 12 years working in corporate America, calling on a lot of clients that were considered part of corporate America, and it did feel a little bit like it was on fire. So I promise this is going to get hopeful, but we're going to talk about some reality of what's happening in America today. Don't worry, we're not going to go into a lot of detail about this. But Americans are among the most stressed people in the world. Isn't that great? Like, I don't know, I saw that image of the guy breathing fire. It just kind of felt. So people in the U.S. 55% of adults said that they experienced stress a lot of the day prior compared to 35% globally. All kinds of stats. Now, I'm not saying corporate America is the reason that we're all stressed. There are a lot of things going on. But my point is, who you are and what's happening with you in your life translates to your work, translates to your school, translates to where you are. You're one person, right? Who you are at the grocery store versus who you are in the classroom or at work, you're still bringing that same person, right? So I'm going to share a little bit of my experience in the inferno of corporate America, and then we're going to talk about hopeful, inspiring stuff, okay? So I promise after this, we're going to start smiling and celebrating. Cool? So look, there are a lot of great things about corporate America. I am a huge fan of capitalism and business. I want to make that clear. I actually don't really work with nonprofits. I serve on a couple boards, but I spent most of my career calling on big companies that were doing amazing things using the power of business. So business is good and can be great. I think business can be a lot better than it is today. And a lot of times, as you start doing something and you keep doing it and you keep doing it, you kind of forget why you're even doing it. And I think that's kind of the state of where a lot of our companies are today. We've been so focused on what we're doing that we've forgotten why we're doing it. And we tend to get insular in what we're focused on. And so the idea is to expand our lens a bit. So I was working in a public company, fast-paced, wonderful company, doing, hiring executives for some of the, biggest and well-known brands in the world. And it was really empowering work. I felt like I was making a difference. But when I had the chance to work with purpose-driven companies that were using their entire business as a platform to have a societal impact, it ignited something in me that had not been ignited before. And this was really because of using the power of business to solve societal problems. It got me like jumping and doing that movement and that dance out of my seat. And the more I got curious about this and what was happening and studying how people were really like fully alive in these companies, they were fulfilled, they were engaged, they were alive in these companies, and that was translating into real results. So I started studying these companies and their financial performance, and that really led me on my path. So the challenge I faced personally is that I had a growing family. I had gone back to work after having my second child. I was a newly promoted partner, and I was like, yeah, I can do it. I can get on the plane and do the day trip to New York and then fly back home and get to my baby. And no, it was crazy. I'm like, wasn't taking care of myself, wasn't taking care of, I just had too much going on. And then I had a third child, so that made it even more significant. And what I realized is that all of what I was seeing in the companies that I loved and admired and what the employees experience in these companies was the same thing I was craving for myself. That self-care and really taking care of myself and working on projects that were really at the intersection of the power of business and the power to do good. So how many of you are familiar with the Business Roundtable's announcement with 181 CEOs saying, we need to move from shareholder to stakeholder-oriented business? Raise your hand. You've seen this. Great. Unfortunately, this wasn't out in 2015 when I was trying to, lead this study and lead the creation of this practice area. There was a lot of great research out there, but we led a study on how the financial performance of companies was actually outweighing the competition. So this is a stat here from the study I led back in 2015 that we looked at what was happening in we looked at about 40, 50 purpose-driven companies, and we knew they were purpose-driven not because of their brand, not brand purpose. I'm talking about living and breathing, and really everything happening inside the company was in support of that mission and that purpose. And we knew that because we knew the executives and their experience within those companies. Because when I was doing an executive search for Kind Healthy Snacks, I got to call the companies at all the, as Applegate was getting acquired by Hormel, or as Annie's Homegrown was getting acquired by General Mills, and really hear what was going on. So we used all of that perspective to shape that study and compare the financial performance. And what was incredibly eye-opening for me was that the number one thing that we noticed was that employees were more fulfilled within these companies. They were more fulfilled because they were living their personal purpose, and that aligned to their organizational purpose. And so these happen to be two of the companies I serve as an advisor with. They're both B Corps. Are anyone familiar with the B Corp movement? Awesome. Great. So they're both two B Corps doing great things. So that perspective of the market research and what was really happening in these companies, along with my own experience and having this real profound shift, something I didn't mention earlier that I'm going to touch on briefly. So after I had my second son, and I went back to work, and I felt like I was frantically jumping from one branch of a tree to the other, like, okay, at home with my kids, okay, in the boardroom, okay, whew, all right, compose myself. Did I eat? I went to work one day. I was getting on a plane in New York, and I pulled a little car out of my bag, like a little toy car, and I was like, okay, I love that I just found that. That's not going to help me in my meeting. But just really balancing and who you are really showing up at work, literally showing up at work. And so what I've realized is just for my own experience, my own survival, my own fulfillment, back here, my own fulfillment, I had to be honest and real and honoring who I was in all parts of my life. I couldn't just pretend that I didn't have this whole life going on that was also stressful outside of what was happening at work. So, and then I'm reading, and the studies that we're doing are saying the companies where you're a whole person at work are actually outperforming the competition. So it gave me more confidence to lean into what I was realizing and experiencing for myself. So I was back at work in the inferno after having my second son, and I ended up asking for some executive coaching because I was having a hard time balancing all of this. And I started with an executive coach. I ended up meeting the people from Conscious Company Media all in the same week. I actually picked up a Conscious Company magazine because my client was on the cover. I ended up gathering this group together that became the Purpose community at Korn Ferry. And then I went home after this 2-day amazing meeting where we're talking about unearthing and, and really digging in. And there was like all these earth references and like what's in your roots. And I was having these there's a lot of earthing metaphors happening. And then I went home and I went to a yoga class because I was like, I need to take care of myself. So I went to a yoga class. I came out of the yoga class and I saw Roots Juices. I was like, Roots? Oh, I think I'm supposed to go in there. So I went in there and I did a 3-day juice cleanse. And by the third day, I was like, my body was replenished. Everything had been depleted from having 2 kids. I felt like all the nutrients came back into my body. And I was having all of these profound realizations about how all of this came together. And I realized that we're all like trees. We're all like trees. We have to live from our roots. We have to balance the work branch and the home branch and all the branches in between. And if we have too many branches, we get overloaded. We have seasons when we can bear more fruit or give off more life, or when we need to, retreat and take time for ourselves. And we actually need sun and rain and soil, or the equivalent of nourishing ourselves and energizing and restoring ourselves. And that thing that I thought was like, the self-care thing is just a branch on the tree, that's actually the water and the rain, the sun, like I was saying. So I had this big realization. I realized that all actually relates to what our companies are trying to do. And so this is what I mean by sparking healthy growth, that this tree metaphor is at the center of things for us. So this tree metaphor became a workshop. So since I left the corporate world and started Kindred Lane to really lean into these, what was really coming through. And after being obsessed with social entrepreneurs and working with them for so many years, I really just wanted to be one. So I decided to go be a social entrepreneur with 3 young kids, and that's a whole other story we'll talk about, but I've been really trying to practice this, taking care of myself as we go and learning my practices so that my personal truth is reflected in what's happening with the company. So Wisdom of the Forest started as a workshop where people draw their trees, and if we had more time, we would do that. I'll give you a taste of it today. But we developed a methodology that came from this. So Wisdom of the Forest has now become the methodology in how we spark healthy growth in people and organizations. And it's really around this principle of reconnecting to yourself, to each other, and to nature. So you guys might be thinking, okay, you're talking about your personal experience, what does this have to do with companies and business? But the point is, what happens to trees that are deeply rooted and actually water and sun? They grow, right? So you can do more on the work branch and the home branch. Are y'all with me? Yeah? Awesome. Okay, so this is what the methodology looks like. So the exercise we did at the beginning, I actually had you guys do a little grounding. So here we did some stomping, and then we moved like this, and then we did some fire, we did some breath, and then we did some stillness, and then we came back through. And if I had more time, I'd share with you how this came about, but I've been working closely with a woman named Neelima Bhatt, who leads a program called Shakti Leadership. She wrote a book with Raj Sisodia, one of the co-founders of Conscious Capitalism, and I've been studying with them for the past few years, and this has really had a big influence on my journey and my path and this coming through me. So this is a methodology we use for Wisdom of the Forest. It basically different mind, body, spirit activities, different states of business. You guys mentioned how corporate America is a little bit in the fire state, so this would suggest that corporate America needs a little bit more air and then needs some water, right? So we basically help individuals through their own work journeys, and we help companies and teams through their journeys too. Workshops, offsites, coaching, consulting, retreats, and we have a leadership development program that really brings us all together. All right, so the idea is that you still need fire within companies, right? You don't want the lights to go out, you don't want the flame to go out, but maybe it could feel a little bit more like this than like being inside the fire. What do y'all think? You think companies could feel like this? Yeah? Why not? There's yeah, right? So this is, if I was taking you through the full personal growth exercise for Wisdom of the Forest, you would have this worksheet and you'd answer these 5 questions, then you'd draw a tree, and then we'd talk about this cycle that I was talking about earlier. So instead, since we don't have time for the full exercise, I'm going to take you guys through one question. You guys good with talking to your neighbors a little bit? You guys good with a little reflection? Okay. So we're going to drop into the forest. Oh, there we go. We are now in the forest. All right, so we're going to go inward for just a moment and reflect on some things. So I want you to think about why you care. So I'm hoping that I've shared something that's made you go, huh, that's interesting. I'm curious about that, or, oh, that really pulls at my heartstrings, or it's making me think quite a bit. Is there anything that I've talked about that you really care about or you're curious about? You can just reflect on this internally. You can jot things down if you want. I'm going to give you a few other prompts. So why you care, the essence of what we mean by this question in the full exercise is what are your values and your beliefs that really root you. This would be the roots on your tree. So when we talk about values and beliefs, I like to think about who are the people who've had a big influence on you? Any mentors, a coach, maybe a grandparent, maybe a teacher you have right now. Doesn't have to be way back when. It could be someone today who's having a big influence on you. If you think about words that they say or the way that they are, or just beliefs or values that you've taken from them. My 7-year-old went through this exercise, and he said his kindergarten teacher would always say, many hands make light work. So he wrote that down for one of his. So just take a minute and think about a saying or something that comes to mind that you would call a core value or core belief. If you're stuck, raise your hand and I can give some more prompts. Another way to think about this too is if there's news that really bothers you, what is that core value that it's getting at? That you really, what do you stand for? All right, everyone good? Raise your hand if you're good. Okay. If you don't have a saying or something that's come to mind, do you have a person who's really influenced you, a mentor, someone you admire? Okay, we're going to go with that as a yes. So, anyone know what kind of trees these are? Aspen. I think I heard some aspen. Did you guys know that aspen trees are not individual trees and each tree is not its own organism? This whole picture, this whole Aspen Grove is one living organism. They all are connected under their roots and they communicate. They share nutrients all from their roots. So I like to think we try to communicate from our branches, what do you do? Where do you live? We don't really connect from our values. So we're going to turn, if you're in the front row, turn to the 2 people behind you and the person, you can kind of make 4-person, 3-person, 5-person pods, just self-organize. You guys are smart business students. In a minute, I'm going to have you self-organize, and we're going to have one brave soul who's going to share something from their roots. Whoever that brave person in the group wants to share, what's that story that you want to share, that saying, where it came from, and just open up a little bit. Be a little bit vulnerable. Are you guys good with this? If you're not, you can opt out. As I said, this is not a forced, all of this is opt-in. So the first person will share what's going on. Just, you don't have to go too deep. You know, we're not, here's the other thing about roots. You don't unearth them. They can be messy. They're supposed to be in the ground. They're supposed to hold you firmly to the ground, right? But if you water them and take care of yourself and you bring them, you know, the sunlight comes out. So what's something important to you that came out from your roots? Or that mentor, that person, just described them. And then the next brave soul is going to be the other tree in the picture and say, wow, when you said that, I really related to that because my soccer coach really influenced me and my values. Cool? Okay. So the first person's going to share, the second person, whoever feels prompted to share, and then the others in the group can react to those. We're going to take about 3 or 4 minutes. Cool? Go. Woo. All right, you guys ready to come back? I heard a little bit of a dip in the volume level. I'm going to take that as a cue. Do you guys have enough time? No? Well, you guys can keep talking. You guys are in class together, right? You're in school together, so these roots can be explored. Look, this is this is an exercise that takes a little vulnerability. It's probably a little different than what you might have expected you were getting yourselves into. So thank you all for for participating. And my husband is an introvert, and he doesn't like it when I do this exercise, so I've learned to opt in, opt out. He's learned to like it. But I think the biggest thing is, we're not supposed to unearth our roots, and like they're holding us firm. So almost the messier and the more complex they are, the stronger your tree can stand. But honoring, self-care and practices that you can bring to work, being a student, to all parts of your life. So Kindred Lane, we focus on your work journey and who you are and how that shows up in your career and your leadership. But as I've said, there are different branches of the tree. So who you are in your personal journey. We actually have a lot of people we team with and have great resources who focus on the personal exploration and the inner work from a personal standpoint. So in a minute, I'll give you my website. And if you want to follow up with me with anything that I've talked about, you can do that. And I'm happy to point you in a different direction if you'd like any of those resources. So I want to see if anyone wants to be brave enough to share. There might just be a reward, a gift for the person who is brave enough, who wants to enter this space in the center of this circle and share. How was it in your pods? Did you learn something? Did you like it? Did you hate it? How was that for you? Any brave souls? I can take it if you didn't like it. I want to know that too.
I thought it was really interesting what you said about how we all kind of connect through our branches and not our roots. It was really interesting coming in and just talking to people, even if we didn't know them. And I say that it's kind of an interesting icebreaker. It's not your typical one, and it was just really refreshing, I would say.
Thank you. Thank you. So was there any connection that came out from your stories you shared, or anything that you'd want to share with the group?
So we talked a lot about who our mentors were, and we kind of concluded that we do get a lot from our parents. That was kind of the theme of our conversation. And it was really neat to see the different ways that people can kind of reflect their parents and their values and beliefs.
Yeah. Great. Thank you. T-shirt, tank, or camp mug? All right. You get a sticker too. All right. Any other brave souls? Now that, there's a gift now, yeah. Yes.
Hey, I'm sorry, just real quick. This event is being recorded, so if you would like to make a comment and share, please raise your hand, and Naraja or I will bring you the mic.
Thank you. Not going to give you a gift for that one. I'll give you a sticker. Get a sticker. Anyone else? I've got a couple T-shirts. Yes.
And just to make sure, this is stemming from the discussion, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or just if anything's on your mind, I want to hear that too.
Oh, geez. I think the comment that was made earlier about parents and household values, morals, ethics, like having a big impact on who people are, that's probably the biggest root, I guess, that was shared amongst our group. Like, for example, I guess living by your word was one that was really shared among our group. Like, my example was when I was younger, my dad was very, very adamant about if you say something, like, you need to do it or you need to stick by your word. And I guess I had this bad habit of, like, my dresser, I would leave my drawers open. I don't know, it was like my room, and it was like no one's going to come in my room, so I kind of didn't care. And I told him I would stop doing it, and I didn't, I guess. So one day I went over to my friend's house, and he actually showed up at their house like half an hour later to come bring me home to close one single drawer. So it was a learning moment for sure, but definitely sparked like a couple smiles, some fun conversation. So
awesome. Thank you so much. T-shirt or tank?
T-shirt, please.
All right. We'll see how I can throw. Oh, that was horrible. Thank you. I did not play college athletics. All right. Anyone else? Do we have time for one more? All right. Anyone else want to share? Something different. Yeah.
Oh, no, it's not that much. It's kind of like what we were talking about being family-oriented. Oh, sorry. I don't think I need it. But being family-oriented and being able to learning that we how much our family has an impression on us, even if we don't know. Like we were talking and we were sharing, and she was sharing how you can, like her older sister has made a big impact on her, and aspires to be more like her sister and being able to stand up, and she's like instilled those values in her. And I kind of talked about similar to him, like my father, even like subconsciously, like I never as a kid was always like, oh, I want to be just like my dad, I want to do this because my dad did it. But it was like subconsciously I've known that I got older, is like I'm really turning into my dad. Like I do things all the time and I'm like, wow, my dad would have did the same thing, or my dad does that. And it's like mind-boggling, really, because it's like I never even noticed it, but all along, like he was planting these seeds in me and planting these things that's helped make me to the person that I'm becoming today.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, I love, you said spark. Kindred Lane's purpose is to spark healthy growth, and you're talking about seeds. I'm like, yes, y'all are speaking my language. T-shirt or tank?
T-shirt.
All right.
You got this.
Oh, that was, sorry. Sorry, I was not trying to hit you, I promise. You get the tank. I got a tank because I almost hit you with it. So one thing I want to mention, this is not, so roots, you can start thinking families, and I love the examples that were thrown. Are you making fun of my throw? A little bit. But I think the thing I want to share is this, everyone's shaped by different experiences. I have a friend who went through this, and she said, there is absolutely no one in my family who had any positive impact on me. And sometimes it's the lessons you learn in spite of things. The point I want to make is the roots. So there's a lot of stuff getting stuck in the muddy layer of politics, religion, just the stuff we can't talk about, especially here in the South. And the roots run deeper than that, right? So when you sense you get into a conversation where you feel a difference from someone, you feel something keeping you apart, and you actually dig deeper into the roots, you can find that there are a lot of commonalities that can help us step out of our differences. And that helps us in life, it helps us in work. Companies, there are tons of studies around the more diverse that companies are, the more inclusive companies are, the better their performance is. And a lot of this is not just having people that are diverse, but having people that are really connected, and being able to connect on a deep level. So that's what this is about, and that's how it relates to being powered on purpose, and how companies can really sustain healthy growth, because it all depends on individuals. Companies are not really anything without the people that make them up. So I think we've got time for a few more questions if you all have any. Thank you so much for having me and for participating. Any questions?
Hi, thank you so much for coming today. You talked a good bit about creating harmony, not only within yourself, but kind of within corporate America, so we're not stuck in that fire. But what would you say to the idea that innovation is born out of conflict?
Yeah, so great question. I think, we need the sunlight, we also need the darkness, the night, right? So we go in cycles around the sun, like there's a cyclical nature to everything. So we need positive and negative, right? It can manifest in different ways. Good cue, I didn't even talk about this slide, but the whole idea around Kindred Lane is, wisdom of the force as a methodology is about being rooted in love, right? Because you can be rooted in fear. Fear then leads to, anger and chaos and those other things. So as long as innovation is coming from a good place, as long as that it's about accountability, it's about, moving things forward, like that fire is important, right? Water gets stagnant if it doesn't have a current. So it's about a healthy degree, but it's about staying in a place that's rooted in love and possibility and openness, because fear actually contracts you and you cannot access your creativity. We collaborate, so Kindred Lane operates with a lot of collaborators. It's a collective, and we tap into different collaborators that come together for a lot of our workshops and our leadership programs. One of the partners we collaborate with is Biomimicry 3.8. They're a consulting firm that looks to nature to solve for innovation and for our pressing business challenges, because the idea is the planet has had life on it for 3.8 billion years. Why do we think that we have all the answers? We can look to nature for the answers. It's like free R&D. So yes, innovation, nature has a lot of tension in it too. But it's, if you can be governed by love, you get a lot more possibilities of an openness to what's to come. Did you have a question? Yeah.
Hi, thank you for coming. So you talked about how you help a lot of businesses spark healthy growth. Could you maybe walk through an example of like a current or like a past client that you worked on a project with?
Yeah, great, thank you. So I've had clients come to me with for Spark coaching, just short-term engagements where we're kind of going deeper on a lot of what we just talked about at the individual level. We'll also do workshops with teams where we take them through how this relates as an individual and then a team and how that shows up in your business challenges. A consulting project I've just been working on is helping, I'd say, create fertile ground within the company. So a lot of companies have the structures and the hierarchy in place of how they do things. And that's not bad. Like, we need structures to make things happen. But a lot of those structures aren't nimble to adapt to a lot of the changes that are necessary to address the societal problems that we're facing, because they weren't built to do that, right? They weren't built to solve for problems. So a lot of companies trying to think about all stakeholders and, have a social purpose. It's like your structure isn't built to do that. So what we do is we help create a fertile ground for that to grow around the structures that are in place. What that looks like is working with individuals and starting a community within the company, helping the individuals connect to their personal purpose, and then helping that team take on strategic projects by involving the right functional areas, but doing it in a more nimble and organic way, which is what I learned after meeting my friends at Biomimicry is actually a biomimetic practice. Doing it the way nature would intend, as opposed to these rigid pathways we've built. And then that can actually help support the structures that are in place in the organization. Thank you. Any other questions? Do we have time for one more? Yeah? How about this side? We've had a quiet group over here. Anyone over here? Any curiosities?
Okay, thank you for being here. So my question is about the study you led at Korn Ferry when you kind of identified these purpose-driven companies.
Yeah.
And you say, these were authentically purpose-driven. How do you identify whether a company is authentically purpose-driven versus doing it because everybody else is doing it?
Right. So that's a big question. It's a great question. So again, companies are just made up of people, right? So am I a good person? Am I authentic? I mean, I try to be. If I say I'm going to do something, I try to do it. But, I've done a lot worse than leave one drawer open once. So that doesn't mean you're not a good person. I mean, a lot of what's happening is companies are kind of putting their brand purpose out there, and all that's doing is shining a light to say, oh, you say you're going to do that, so are you actually doing that? And then I'll have companies come to me and say, uh-oh, we said we were going to do this, and now we actually don't know how, and it's worse that we made this big announcement. It's like, I'm going to go be a vegan. And then you see me eating hamburgers, like, what are you going to say, right? So it's just that equivalent for a company. The challenge is that culturally, we tend to point out what people do wrong. We tend to point out that on ourselves. We do that for organizations, and so any company that gets a misstep is going to be, chastised for that, and then it becomes more and more difficult. So it becomes a fear-based environment to operate from, as opposed to we're all just trying to do the best we can. So how do you actually find out if they're authentic? We were in a great position to do that because we knew what was really happening inside the companies, and we were there to tell a positive story. So we did qualitative interviews about 30 companies and founders, CEOs, business leaders. The study was called People on a Mission, which is still available. But we did qualitative interviews of those companies, and all these companies wanted to be part of something bigger. They wanted to share what their successes were because they wanted other companies to have successes like theirs. Companies like Seventh Generation participated, and they had all of their formulas available for the public because they wanted other people to do what they were doing. So they're just things you can tell if your mission is actually bigger than yourself. And if others can succeed and help your mission, then that's a factor. You can also look at what's the cultural experience, what's the employee experience, and how does that relate to the brand. If all of the focus is in the marketing and the external and not actually the employee's experience, then that's a challenge. The Business Roundtable, it was great that they said that, but they're also saying customers are the most important stakeholder. Well, if customers are the most important stakeholder, then employees are going to get what's left over. And how are your employees going to support your customers if they're getting the scraps? But it's not okay to say, our employees come first, customers, you come second. But actually, your customers will be better taken care of if you do put your employees first. Does that answer your question? Yeah. It's hard to tell, though.
Hi, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
So at the beginning of your presentation, you touched on how you were on a journey of finding your own personal purpose. And I was wondering what you would describe that to be for you.
Thank you. So it is a journey, and the words have shifted. So when I started Kindred Lane, I was thinking that my personal purpose was to spark healthy growth through community. Community is a big driver for me. I mentioned Imperative, which is a purpose assessment company that I work with. And there's a tool and assessment you can take. They work with organizations. So like if Georgia Tech wanted to have the program, then you could all go in and take the purpose assessment. You can do peer coaching around it. It's a starting point. It's not all the answers, but it gives you a starting point. And I realized through that I care about society, impacting at the societal level. So when I was recruiting this individual and I wanted to know how that individual was going to change this company and this company was going to change society, it was really because I cared about the societal impact and community. So that was a tool that was helpful. But I've been clarifying my purpose. I actually haven't shared this with anyone, but this came to me in a leadership program I participated in. The words changed a little bit, so I'll share that with you. You all are the first to hear this, but it's to inspire a new magical way of living and working in harmony with nature for myself, my family, and everyone we touch. I'm in the process of asking my husband how he feels about that, to adopt that as like the family mission. But yeah, thanks for asking.
Thank you.
Are we out of time, or? Okay. One more. Yes?
So I was wondering, when you talk about taking care of your employees, have you found a good way to get like kind of blue collar or factory workers involved in this process of taking care of your employees?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I work with, I have a client who has manufacturing facilities across the world, and they are in the food industry, and they have manufacturing facilities all over the world. And some of the programs, people can say, oh, this isn't for everyone. This is a nice to have. Once you've kind of had all your basic needs met, then it's a luxury to focus on your purpose. I think it's a responsibility to focus on your purpose if you have, the luxury to do it. But everyone is, every human has a purpose. So this is not like purpose is just for some people. It's just a matter of, are you able to focus on your purpose in this moment, this week, this month, or, more expansive? But this company in particular was looking at how do we address that opportunity of where people, like what's their aptitude? Are they focused on their purpose for this moment, this week, or more expansive, what's the purpose of the organization over the long term? And just where do people, what's their interest and like what's their temperature for that, if that makes sense. And what they found is that if they are nourishing and caring for the world and the food that they provide, and that was a lot of their purpose statement, that what did that look like for their hourly workers in their plant in Mexico? And what they found was that their turnover rate in that factory was higher because people were leaving after the first week because they didn't have their paycheck until the second week. And so they needed food to provide. So they started looking at what could they do in terms of the compensation, but then also providing free breakfast and meals at the factory in order to nourish and care for their employees. So they took their purpose and they looked at it inward of how that would apply to meet the needs of their employees. So that's just one example that comes to mind, but it's really about adapting it and not forcing this experience that's not going to be meaningful because, like, oh, that sounds good. Like, you can sit around and pontificate how we're going to solve the world. Like, I've got to figure out how to put food on the table for my family, and that's a very real purpose. So yeah, it's just that sensitivity about what people need and being able to flex. All right.
All right, well, thank you so much, everyone, for coming. Can we please give a round of applause for our speaker?
Thank you for having me. I've got some stickers. I also have some of these friendship bracelets that are a red thread of kindness if anyone's interested. And I have a shirt, a tank top for you who I almost hit. Thank you.